Welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting.
Welcome back to the Gottesdienst crowd. This is Jason Broughton. Today we have back with us Dave Peterson. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We are looking at the gospel reading for the 16th Sunday after Trinity. It comes from Luke chapter 7, verses 11 to 17, and I'll read that in the New King James. Now it happened the day after that Jesus went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and a large crowd. And when he came near the gate of the city, behold, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a large crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came and touched the open coffin, and those who carried him stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." So he who was dead sat up and began to speak, and he presented him to his mother. Then fear came upon all, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has visited his people." Okay, the gospel context here is what?
Well, it's relatively early, obviously, in Luke's gospel.
Like the seventh chapter?
The seventh chapter, yeah. So we do have, he's been baptized, he's been tempted, he's called disciples, and there have been quite a few miracles, but I don't think any parables yet. So he heals like the multitudes in Luke 4. He heals Peter's mother-in-law, Luke 4. We have the miraculous catch of fish, one of them in Luke 5, cleanses a leper, heals the paralytic and forgives his sins, the one let down through the roof, heals a withered hand on the Sabbath in Luke 6. There's another mass healing on the plain right before the sermon on the plain. Then at the beginning of Luke 7, we have the centurion's servant who was healed with a word. He was sick, not dead, but close. And then in Nain, the dead boy, right, of a widow.
So what we're seeing post Luke 4 is that fulfillment of the Spirit of God coming upon him.
Right.
Immediately. So 5, 6, 7, we're seeing the good news preached, the dead raised, like all of these things.
Yeah. And I think there's a kind of culminating sense. If you count the catch of fish as a feeding miracle, then really you kind of have all of the types of miracles. Did I say there was an exorcism? I think I didn't write that.
I don't recall you did.
But there is that's actually the first miracle. That's right after he preaches in the synagogue and they try to throw him off the cliff. So if you have an exorcism, healing of the sick, multiple cases of that, a particular leper, because so we don't have a blind or a deaf, but we do have paralytics, withered hands, mass healings, and then finally in Nain, kind of this, I think in some ways a culminating miracle that this is really the last enemy and what the other things are all symptoms of, in a sense.
Okay.
Right. I mean, death is the ultimate kind of thing. So we've talked in years past, we've talked about this. We've talked about the gates quite a bit, and we've talked about the weeping or the command to not weep and some of those things.
Have we talked about location at all? Where is Nain
we don't know.
With respect to Jerusalem? Is it in like the northern parts? I mean, do we get a sense of that from the text? Where is he coming from?
I don't remember. Some reason I want to put it near Capernaum.
I think you're right, because that's earlier in chapter 7.
Yeah. Oh, that's probably why. Yeah. But we don't know where Nain is. This is the only mention of it in the Bible, and apparently there's no archaeological, we haven't found anything where it's, this is Nain. So it doesn't seem to be a very significant village, though it's big enough to have gates.
Is it related to the modern Nain?
Is there a modern city name in Israel?
I think so.
Okay. I've not been there.
Yeah, northern Israel, lower Galilee. Northeast of Nazareth and near Mount Tabor.
Okay, well, that's not super far from Capernaum. I could see that kind of. Yeah, could be. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, it seems like it's kind of in Jesus' backyard. If we're seeing Capernaum as kind of his headquarters, it seems like it's in that area.
Okay. Well, that makes total sense.
I did not refresh myself with just commentary this year.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he probably comments on that, but I don't remember.
So is there significance to that place at all in the Old Testament, other than it's outside of Judea, right?
Yeah. I mean, doesn't it? I'm just going off memory here. It seems like somebody makes the case that the word Nain means comfort. I thought I read that somewhere. But again, who knows?
Okay.
I mean, the significant thing is that it seems sort of spontaneous, right? It wasn't, they didn't ask him to come. So I think all these other miracles, they're bringing people to Jesus to heal heal them, right? Or to do something about this. And here it's as though he stumbles upon them.
When does the John the Baptist episode happen in Luke? Is it Luke 18, 19?
Well, in the next chapter, you get the comparison that you complain about John the Baptist, but then is it that late when John dies? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. When, because it's recorded in Matthew that the disciples, but there's something specific in Luke, isn't there?
Could be. Probably. That seems kind of late, but maybe you're right. I don't know.
No, I don't. Maybe it's not. It must be before.
I'm trying to flip through and see it, based on the paragraph headings, which isn't always the most efficient way to find things, but.
Right.
John the Baptist sends messengers to Jesus in Luke 7. So same chapter.
That's right, the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's an intervening, scene, but yeah. No, there isn't. It's right after. It's verse 18.
I can't believe
the disciples
I missed
of John.
that.
Yeah, I didn't even, I was trying to figure out the setup. I didn't, yeah. So does that say anything about him being beheaded? Then no, not there, but... So why were you asking? What were you thinking when you were saying that?
Well, because in Matthew, that's when Jesus says, go tell John what you see and hear. That all these things are happening. And in Matthew, I don't think anyone's been raised from the dead yet.
Well, in Luke, I don't think the blind have been cured or the deaf have heard yet either. So,
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean that hadn't happened before this. It's just, Well, anyway, I think we've said enough. I mean, not today, but I think over the past we've said enough about kind of the exegesis of this. Sure. I'd like to walk through one of Luther's sermons.
Okay.
On this from the new translation of the Lenker in volume 79, though I think it's basically the same, and it starts on page 132. So Luther starts out this sermon much the way he started another miracle sermon we looked at recently, with the whole point of miracles is that we would allegorize them. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, that's what he says in the first paragraph. He's like, we should learn from this miracle that Jesus is compassionate, that he comes seeking this woman and he does what she could not do for herself, and in some sense, except by faith, even expected, right?
How is that allegorizing it?
Well, it's taking this is Ben Mays always, when I start yammering about allegorizing, he always says it's just applying the text. Hmm. And I think there's a fairness to that. It's allegorizing in that it's finding a spiritual meaning and application of the text that is distinct in some sense, but driven from the historical reality and literal meaning of the text. That's how, right? I mean, the literal meaning of Jesus raised this boy from the dead is that Jesus raised that boy from the dead. And then, when we say, well, what does this mean for us? And what does this show us about the character of Jesus? That is not, that's not the sensus literalis. That's more than unus, right? It's duus. I don't know what duo. I'm terrible with the numbers. I don't know the numbers in any language. In fact, barely in English. But right, it's kind of, so that's why I was saying. But anyway, if you don't like the word allegory.
No, I just was, because I usually think allegory in this aspect a little bit differently. Like, you're saying this stands for this, and that stands for this.
Well, he does do that in this, but here he's being more general. He does do that in the sermon,
to me, that Jesus does that demonstrates, or we can conclude that he has a desire to do these things. Doesn't seem like allegory to me. It's like drawing a conclusion.
Okay, I mean, that's fair,
but. I'm just saying. That's how I'm used to understanding allegory. Is that a broader sense in understanding allegory? I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to.
Well, I don't mind. I mean, I think it's a fair. It just really depends, right?
Okay.
I mean, the word allegory, I think is the right word, but I know it annoys people, and because people have become accustomed to a very kind of narrow sense of the term. But an allegory is simply a figure of speech, and I'm just rebelling against this kind of idiotic reading of Scripture that is shallow and sort of only cares about history, which really is a reaction to historical criticism. Where the most important thing about this story is that it happened. I don't think actually the most important thing about this story is that it happened. It absolutely happened, and if it didn't happen, it would be meaningless. Fair enough, but we are meant to actually apply this to our lives, to draw lessons from this, to actually learn theology from this, not simply history. And so I want us to learn to read that, and I think we do see Luther doing this regularly. So does, I probably said this before on here, but Reinhold Pieper actually says in his homiletics that the miracles should be preached, what's the word? I think with a spiritual meaning, he says. And if you don't preach the spiritual meaning of the miracles, you failed to preach them appropriately, which is hilarious because, he is really saying again that we should allegorize them, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think that's funny. I used to feel kind of bad. I did it anyway, but for decades, I noticed right from the beginning of my ministry that I always preached the miracles allegorically. I always sort of saw, the correspondences between the actual events and persons and actions, with things that God gives in word and sacrament and so forth, and Christology. But then I would preach the parables, which of course are literally allegories, and I would preach those like historical events. And I just always thought, this seems a little bit wrong because the miracles are historical events, the parables are allegories. So I only found that Reinhold Pieper quote about not even 6 months ago. So I've been really rejoicing in that.
Have you read his entire book?
I have. I should write a review of it, but I don't know how to.
We could do a podcast on it.
That would be fun. Let's do that.
Podcast review?
That's easier than writing a review.
Yeah, let's do that.
I have pretty extensive notes on it, in it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Well, maybe maybe you should do it with the translator. But anyway, we can talk about it later.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't think. I know him, but his name's escaping me in the second. Isaac something.
Okay.
Great guy.
Okay, so Luther. In one of his sermons, he starts with like this, describing the stark reality of death, right?
Probably.
How it spares nobody. Like it makes no discriminations, no distinctions. It seizes the young as well as the old.
Yeah.
And it brings grief, especially when it strikes like the hope of parents. And I mean, as a dad, when you see your kids, I haven't seen it completely yet, but sometimes you have certain hopes and dreams for them, and then they go different paths, and you have a particular morning because you had hoped something else for them. And it's like not necessarily bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But, you kind of always saw that they would go in a particular direction, but they didn't. And it's not bad that they didn't go in the direction that you had hoped for, but there's a certain mourning that you go through, like, oh, that's not a reality, and learning to rejoice in the direction that they went, right? But that would be especially stark for those who had hopes and it was taken or seized from them because of death.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially with the death of children, we're burying the future.
Yeah.
Right? Potentiality, possibility. I always say when we bury adults, at the funeral dinner, there's a lot of laughing and appropriate laughing because we're remembering and we're rejoicing in the person. When we bury children, there's nothing to laugh about.
Yeah.
Because
is that what Jesus is on about when he says putting the seed into the ground? You're burying the future?
Oh, that's good. I like it.
I mean, because I live among cornfields and bean fields and wheat fields, and every spring these guys are burying something in the hope of a future crop.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, there you're burying for the future. I mean, I guess that's not the way I meant it. When I say we're burying the future, I mean, there is no future, right? The hopes and dreams for this child. There's no stories to tell and laugh about and rejoice in. I mean, of course we believe that, this child lives, so there is a future in that sense. But so maybe what we're doing is, so when we bury an adult, that's why I say we're burying the past. We've got stories to tell. That's why that's why we laugh. And when I say we're burying the future, maybe what I should say instead is there is no past because the child didn't live long enough. So we don't have any stories. And, I mean, it's particularly distressing. The younger the child, the worse, right? And there's this awkwardness of, I never knew you. Particularly if we're talking about like a stillborn or, a very young baby. And that part of the grief is, we give this baby a name, but the name has no personality. And that is painful, that's a kind of hollowness that a unique burden that parents and grandparents and others have to kind of bear to wait to know that child in heaven.
Should we imagine, based on what we've seen from other episodes in our other children, maybe they'll have this?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, for my own part, I find it impossible to imagine that. I don't. Maybe it's a weakness or a flaw in myself. I just can't. I just can't do it. Seems like. I
do like to imagine. We've had 3 miscarriages. And I do like to imagine that they are like on the laps of grandfathers or great-grandfathers.
And together.
And playing. I do like to imagine that.
Yeah, me too. Jeez, you're making me cry. I do like the idea of them being together.
Yes.
But I guess, well, let's not talk about that anymore.
Okay. So the translation here for the beer is open coffin. I never...
Is it? That's what the New King James has?
Yes.
Oh, I never noticed that either.
It says...
I don't think that's what it is.
14. Then he came and touched the open coffin.
Oh,
and those who carried him stood still.
Well, I mean, they don't have coffins, right? I mean, this is isn't it? It's the pallet, right? I mean, it's the it's the bier. It's the thing they're carrying the body to the grave in, but they're not going to bury him in a casket.
No.
I mean,
So maybe that's they were trying to why would you translate it that way?
Yeah, I guess they're trying to. They don't want us to hear a closed casket. The guy in a box being carried to the grave,
and they don't want us to not know what a bier is.
Right. I guess that's the idea, but I don't like it. I didn't even notice it. I've never even noticed it. I was following along in Greek when you were reading, so I probably wasn't listening that closely, but we use the New King James here, and I don't remember it. Surprised I haven't been annoyed by it before. See?
Well, maybe this is an updated version.
You are annoying me. See?
I'm good at this. It's one of my spiritual gifts, Lauren tells me.
What verse is it?
14. I mean, it's the word for
you're right.
Saru.
Yeah, there it is. It says open coffin in my version, in my New King James also. So
okay.
I don't know. It sounds weird to me. I don't like it. But I guess maybe it's not a bad kind of cultural equivalence for what's happening.
Yes, I mean that it is actually open.
Yeah. And like you say, if you say beer, maybe just people aren't going to know what that is, and it sounds like beer you drink. That probably doesn't help things. So.
Okay.
All right. Well, anyway, so Luther in this sermon, right, starts with this kind of general, this is what the miracles are. And then he launches right into really, this first half of the sermon is all sort of what we often call theology of the cross. Why do good people suffer while the wicked prosper? And, of course, Luther gives the explanation we'd expect. The wicked aren't really prospering, even though it appears as though they are. They are children of wrath, and they will be destroyed, and their lives are not as happy as they appear on the outside. And the righteous, the believers, are suffering, but it's not a punishment, it's a chastisement, and God is doing this to test them and to strengthen their faith in love, right? So here, of course, it's very easy to see, I think, that, this woman goes through a terrible trial, obviously, as painful as they come, but it's quite temporary. And, she's given back her son. And Luther's got a great line where he says, she rejoices more in that 1 hour than she had rejoiced in all of the child's life before this. And I think he's, I don't know if he could prove that, but I think it's a very reasonable statement and assertion, right?
Yeah.
That she really is, and she learns in this that Jesus is the author of life and that he's come to defeat death, and that which, Luther has another where he talks about she's so overcome with grief, she doesn't know how to pray. She's afraid to ask, even though, of course, what she wants is that the child would come back. She thinks it's impossible. And that's why she's told to stop weeping. And Jesus, he knows what she desires without her saying it. And Luther loves this because it's completely monergistic. Mm-hmm. So, she doesn't even get credit for even asking for relief.
Right.
And it's not accidental. I said Jesus stumbles upon her, but of course it's not accidental. Whether he does it, consciously according to his omniscience, or whether it's the Holy Spirit simply directing him in his humiliation, the way that the Holy Spirit directs all of his church to this person. In any case, it's a divinely ordered reality that this boy should be raised. And
have you ever discussed the Kai Geneta in terms of, from our perspective, it always feels or seems as though it just happened. But from God's perspective, this is part of the unfolding of his divine plan. Oh,
interesting. In other words, do you mean this as a proleptic resurrection of the last day, or just the natural order? Or what do you mean by the
that's
unfolding?
A good question to help refine what I'm thinking. Throughout the Gospels, almost every episode, not every, but often, you get this Kai Geneta, and it happened, or now it happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's translated when, sometimes it's translated in different ways. But it gives us the sense, like, as you said, Jesus just stumbles into these things, and these things just kind of happen or arise in our lives without explanation.
Yeah.
And that gives us, that is our experience of God's action in our lives, and it happened, right?
Right.
But from a different perspective, from the eternal divine perspective, it's not just it happened, it was part of an unfolding of his plan.
Right.
And I wonder if there is, going along with that theology of the cross, it seems like the wicked prosper and that God's people are suffering and being held down. I wonder if there's something there that could be mined in terms of this is how it feels, but there's something else at play.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I like it a lot. I have never preached this. I've never really spent, I don't think I've ever really spent any time on this word, but I think you're right. I mean, it's a perfect, right. It happened. Sometimes it came to pass. The King James, I think, maybe translates.
Sure. And it came to pass. Yeah.
But I kind of like it. So there's always this thing with the perfects, right? Where it's actually a present tense in Greek.
Yeah. Well, agenita is aorist, isn't it? Middle.
I'm not looking at it. I was just going off of your pronunciation, but I thought it was.
The Greek is an aorist.
Okay, it's an aorist. All right. Well, so much for that theory. Okay, so it happened. Yeah, I mean, I like what you're saying. I was trying to sort of, as you were talking, I was thinking about it, and it is a kind of interesting correspondence between, fate or destiny as God has determined it, and election, and also at the same time the free will and agency of Christians, because it happened, but it wasn't. It's not fate or destiny, exactly, right? It's rather God presenting this opportunities and then intervening in ways that are beneficial for his people. So both things happened, right? It happened that the boy died. It also happened that the boy rose. It happened that the mother wept and was rebuked. It also happened that she rejoiced. And all of these things are kind of interactions, and it's not as though the woman is just completely passive in this. The boy is pretty passive, but he does sit up, I guess. I don't know. I think that you're right about that, though. That there is theological weight to this. That's probably sort of like the word "behold."
Yes,
it's one of those words that we can. It's so common that we sometimes miss its significance, I suspect. Behold's kind of obvious to the preacher, that it's significant. But I think in the hearing of the Bible being read, or we had another one in here, right? We had an amen in there, which was translated assuredly, or where was that? Did I make that up?
I don't think it's in this text.
Oh, maybe I was looking at something. Maybe I'm getting myself confused. I thought there was. Well, anyway, that's another one that can kind of slide over us a little bit easier. I thought there was something. Maybe not. Anyway, I like your idea. I like the way you're thinking, that this is. Yeah, there is that kind of. The weight of the aorist, too, is the sort of objectivity of it. The aspect of it is that it's completed. It's already done. But there is a kind of, in that sort of like, there is a kind of, yeah.
I mean, maybe there's a sense, too, in terms of God's activity in visiting his people, that he can undo the aorist.
Yeah. Right. It happened that he died, but then it also happened that he rose. Right. It's funny. I was thinking about I was thinking about this with the word for victory in Greek. I was reading something, and I ran across it was I can't remember how to pronounce it, but it was the plural, first person plural, we, and it was in the perfect. So it was like, it would be translated like, we have won, right? Mm-hmm. But I would translate it, we are winning, right? Because that whole idea, and ongoing kind of thing. And I was thinking about this in terms of, sometimes you'll see this in Christian iconography. You see this where it looks like Nike, mm-hmm. like the brand name of the tennis shoe. And you'll see this like, this, and that's I think a noun, right? Victory. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about this as, I wonder if we should have it instead, right? It should be this, whatever this is. I can't remember how to say it in Greek. But anyway, this, instead of victory as a noun, we should put on our icons instead, we are winning. I mean, this is our victory, right? And not just a victory. It's the ongoing, defining victory of our lives that Jesus has died for us. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I bring that up.
But we were talking about the aorist and...
Yeah, this whole idea of how these things kind of play out. And I was just sort of thinking about it as victory feels... This is overly harsh, and I don't mean this completely, but I think there's a certain sense in which just looking at Jesus on the cross and saying he won isn't enough. Like it needs to be we are and not even just we won, but like we are winning.
Yeah.
And this is the way. And I mean, in relation to this, right, that this boy lives. And, this is the ongoing reality, even if the boy dies again, which presumably he does. Mm-hmm. And yet we don't say that boy is dead, right? Because no one who believes in Jesus is dead. Mm-hmm. So we got to take it to that. I mean, that's the confession of faith that responds, right, in these things. Mm-hmm.
So Luther is pointing out the difference between the temporary and the eternal, or the possible and the impossible.
Well, he's really, it's sort of the purpose of suffering first. Mm-hmm. He does get into, in a kind of not with the terminology, but he does get into the three types of death. He sees all of them in this event, right? That is, and all of them as a single source, that is original sin. So the reason we don't have spiritual life, or we're spiritually dead, is that we've been cut off from God by unbelief, right? Because of sin. And then the reason we deserve to go to hell and die eternally is because of sin, right? Mm-hmm. Originating in original sin. And then finally, the reason that this boy has been separated, body and soul, physical death, is because of sin. And so he very much wants to make this very clear as to what's caused this. God's not the author of evil, and this is where these things come from. And in this sermon, like you said in another sermon, Luther points out that doesn't matter that this boy is a righteous boy who's lived a relatively innocent life, a good life. He's not a notorious, terrible sinner. It doesn't matter that his mother's a good woman, right? We're all, right? Everybody dies. Children die. Good people die. Nobody kind of escapes this. And nobody can save himself out of it. And he sort of suggests, I think, in correspondence, which I've never thought about before, because I teach this three types of death all the time.
Sure.
To catechism stuff, but three types of life. I don't know why I never thought of that before. Seems kind of obvious, right? But there are three types of life, and they also have a common cause. And Luther does sort of say this, right? And of course, the common cause of faith, spiritual life, of even physical life on this plane, and eternal life are all grace, right? God doesn't owe anyone breath. God doesn't owe anyone faith, and God doesn't owe anyone fellowship with him in heaven forever. Mm-hmm. So there is this reality that God has taken on the cost of this and bestows it freely. And none of those three deaths could be undone in any other way. Like there's no digging out of this, right? There's no making atonement for oneself, even for the smallest of sins. There's no ability of man to keep a person alive, body and soul. I mean, we can kill people to some degree, but we can't make them alive. We can't bring back. But Jesus does all of this by grace, including not only keeping them alive, but bringing them back to life. So to see, the other interesting thing I'd never thought about before that Luther sort of sparked in me was this correspondence between eternal. So that if there's three types of life, all three exist in eternal life. So you could say all three types of death also exist in eternal death, because the people in hell, that's eternal death, are physically dead. Their bodies and souls are not together, though they are raised on the last day, so maybe they are. But nobody has faith, right? They're all unbelievers. Mm-hmm. But this to see the resurrection of the dead as a restoration to physical life, the restoration of body and soul, but now in perfection without sin, and faith now being confirmed in bliss and finally free of temptation, not only of guilt, which is what the absolution removes from us now, but also being finally removed, original sin finally removed, so that there's no more concupiscence, right? No more temptation to sin, no more desire to sin, no more ability to sin, right? Actually free, and then completely free of shame as well, not of memory, but of the shame and the guilt with the memory and the temptation in the memory. I mean, to think about what, I think sometimes, at least when I've sort of talked about eternal life, I've not dwelled a lot. I've talked about the resurrection of the body, but I don't think I've quite tied them together this closely, or the ongoing reality of faith. Though in some sense you might say that faith is sort of all of it's transformed, right? But faith becomes a purer expression of love. Right? These three remain: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love.
So does that mean that the others pass?
I know.
I think love remains?
Well, I mean, there's a sense in which we don't have, right? We don't hope in heaven in the same way, because things are not unseen. I mean, there is some transformation, I think, of faith and of hope.
Gotcha.
And I don't know exactly what that is, but it does. I think that's fair to say that love isn't transformed. Love remains, and love, it's purified, but it's the love with which we love God is the same, but the faith with which we will believe in God is going to be transformed. That's what I think. That's a little. I don't know if I can prove that, but that seems to me what Paul's getting at.
Sort of what he talks about in
Hebrews.
His letters to the Thessalonians, even. You will be changed.
Be changed, yeah. Yeah, right. And it really is beyond our capacity to understand or to imagine. Mm-hmm. It might still be beyond our capacity to understand or imagine even then. I mean, we're still going to be creatures, limited, right? We're not going to be omniscient or omnipresent, right? So, but we'll be, if in fact it's still beyond our capacity, we'll be at peace with it, right? Content with it.
Is this an opportunity to talk about the sweet names of death?
Oh, you love that, don't you?
I do.
Yes, it is. Why don't you give us a refresher on that again?
Oh, goodness. Turning the tables on me. Well, I mean, you can find these in Pieper, right?
Yeah, you can find them in Pieper.
Eschatology, under temporal death. And he just points us to, I think, Chemnitz, as well as maybe Gerhard as well, places in Luther that talk about, some people call them euphemisms, but I think the Latin for it is the sweet names, like sleep, seeing Jesus face to face, the bosom of Abraham, being buried with our fathers, the ways in which we refer to death that speak of the hope that is to come, right?
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that in this text, the emphasis is upon death as the enemy. But there is a sense in, right, you're really talking sort of that we're going to refuse to give death any sting by the sweet names, and we're going to confess according to the promise of the resurrection and the belief that God works all things together for good. And that is a kind of theology of the cross that's going to say, right, we're defined. We know, I mean, we're not stupid. We know that this is terrible and painful and awful. And yet at the same time, we do not mourn as those who have no hope.
Right.
This is a rebuke, to this woman for her weeping a little bit, right?
Yeah, because you've gone into this. This is not.
Yeah, it's not weep.
It's not weep. It's like
wailing.
Wailing.
Yeah, and so she's confused about things. I mean, not that we're not sympathetic to her, but right. I usually always go to the whole Rachel thing, right, and the Matthew passage about the slaughter of the holy innocents.
Oh, yes.
Those refusing to be comforted. And that's wrong. Rachel's wrong to refuse to be comforted because there's a promise there in Jeremiah that her children will come back to the land of the living. Mm-hmm. And, these babies that are taken by terrible violence, unjust tyranny of Herod, they come early to their reward, and their mothers should not refuse to be comforted. They should receive the comfort that God wants to give them. Mm-hmm. And they should, I think they do, the mothers of Bethlehem. I think Rachel does. In that moment, she's like this mother who's wailing. And of course, this mother has it, in fairness, a lot easier because she gets the resurrection right then. Mm-hmm. But we all get it. Yeah. She's not singled out for this. All believers, all Christian mothers get their Christian children back. Right? I mean, this is the promise for each of us. Mm-hmm. And so she's not special in that sense. And so whether your children were taken from you early or whoever's been taken from you, here's the promise.
Mm-hmm. This is, I find this Sunday sometimes very difficult, especially as you look out and you know that there are mothers out there who have either had miscarriages or stillbirths or, even children dying fairly young from cancer or other things.
Right.
Early on as a pastor preaching on this, I was very uncomfortable preaching on this text because I felt like I needed to answer the question, why did he do it for them and not me?
Right.
I don't wrestle with that as much now. But for those who might be, what do you suggest in terms of discussion points on that?
Well, first of all, I think you're right to not be uncomfortable. I think your discomfort. I mean, was immaturity as a preacher,
yeah.
And I felt the same way. And I think a wrong lack of confidence in the sophistication and the faith of the people.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I have in my own mind, I've been through. I really seems like the exact same thing. And then what I've come to learn is that the people are actually far more sophisticated in this than we give them credit for. Uh-huh. And we're sort of more sensitive than we need to be in a way. Now, I do think that, miscarriages and stillbirths are just, they're more common than not. More people have been through them than haven't. And so there definitely does need to be some sensitivity and awareness of this. But I think also we can sort of expect Christian mothers to have already dealt with this in a very God-pleasing and theologically appropriate way. But if it's fresher or if it brings up new pain, things I would say sort of talking points, again, is that, you've been called to live by faith, and this promise is also for you and for your children. And this woman's not unique in that way. And, she got it quicker than you did, but you're going to get it. And you got to believe that, right? Mm-hmm. And you got to find comfort in that. And I often go I love David's confession,
yes.
when he loses the son by Bathsheba. your child's not coming back to you in this life, but you can go to him. But you got to stay in the faith, which I know is a law statement, but right. You if you want to see your child, you can either, if you want to be angry at God and teach him a lesson by, going to hell and never seeing your child, that it just doesn't seem very reasonable.
Right.
Or if you could learn to accept, as painful as this is, and I'm not belittling that, of course, but if you could accept that actually God loves your child more than you do, and that he did what was best for that child. What if God would have let you have this child here on earth to enjoy and have the child fall away from faith?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather the child be with you forever in heaven than for 50 years here on earth? And we have to. We actually do believe and trust that God's will is always best, and that He's doing this in mercy. And or maybe it's not even. Maybe the child wouldn't fall away. Maybe this child would have become an idol for you, and you would have fallen away, right? And maybe you're being tempted now to test God and to lay out the criteria by which you'll accept His will, and you need to be broken and believe that He loves you. And then I usually go to Job, with the return, the Job. I love, Job gets double everything at the end, but he lost 10 children, he only gets 10 children, except that's double. Because the first 10 children, right, are still alive. They just live in heaven. And Job does get them back also, but he has to wait still. Yeah. So all those kinds of things.
So in a sense, to go back to the "and it happened" thing, so God wants to transform our aorist into perfects, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And is calling us to be a part of that. Will we?
Right. And my experience in the ministry is that, Christian mothers and fathers and grandparents receive that counsel quite well.
Yeah.
I have not, there's, so that it's about as tough a thing as a person can endure, is to lose a child when a child is older, is actually worse.
For sure.
But and I mean, it's a very difficult thing to get over. I'm not trying to. But these are. We do know that these sorts of losses have ruined people. Whenever it happens, and you can become obsessed about it, and you can feed your self-pity and your anger and ruminate and so forth. And, it's a call to live by faith. And a call to live by faith is never an easy path.
So if, and maybe this isn't for the sermon, but maybe it could be in terms of what do we see unfolding before this wailing woman in terms of where we can point them to actual activities that they can do daily to come into contact with the Jesus who raises from the dead.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, it's all the same stuff, right? Read the Bible, pray, come to church.
Do you think there's a place that to come to confession about this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a time too, outside of confession or within it, for kind of pastoral counsel. It's funny. I think we talked about this last week, but I'm more and more sending people to the pastor to the epistles, to Paul's letter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I more and more believe that doctrine is the most comforting thing. And if you understand, the better you understand and have meditated upon the three types of death and the resurrection of the body and the degrees of glory, and the intermediary state of the soul and original sin. And the more that you kind of meditate and see these things, the more comforted and confident you are that God is in control and there is order in the world. Right. And I think one of the most kind of essential things is that it's this order in the world and the orderliness and the goodness of God that convinces us that he is predictable. So which is to say, right? I mean, this predictive, because I think, again, it's like when we're suffering, whatever terrible setbacks, tragedies, injustices, crosses that God puts on us, the kind of thing is it feels arbitrary, and it feels
like it just happened.
Yeah, like it just happened, and there's no control, and there's no sense, and there's no purpose, and so doctrine, the study of doctrine, actually kind of strips that back so that we actually recognize, right, this is, St. Peter, right, we should not think it's strange that these things have happened to us. And we should, so
I think that's actually a supremely insightful thing, because we're always taught, that doctrine is practical. We're taught that doctrine is life. We've heard this at the seminary or from seminary professors. We're taught also, or we seem to think that it's boring. But I think that what you've just put on display here in terms of how what doctrine does is it takes kind of the chaos of the things that happen and puts it back into God's good order so we can understand it.
Right.
Understanding is the key to find comfort as well as to have hope. Right. Because
it's not senseless, it's not without purpose, and it's not without end. Right.
So this is why our sermons should be doctrinal.
Yes.
So that we are bringing that God's order back into people's lives, and then God's dominion is what's ruling there.
Right. And I would say the Word of God, right? That you're being reoriented to reality, because the temptation is to believe the devil's lies.
Yeah, that is so true. This is my own experience in when I read the Bible and then understand where this doctrine comes from. It reorients, and it's in a sense that it gives us our bearings again as we live out our lives in a disorienting existence.
Yeah. And that's what gives, I think, it's not just, it's comfort. I don't want to, deny that, but I think it also gives grit.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, if it is, again, because it's
so
like, well,
obviously true.
I know, because now again, like, this is it's not chaos. This has purpose, and it has an end.
Right.
If you think that, whatever, if you're in some terrible situation, you think it's only going to get worse, well, it might get worse for a while, but, we totally believe in the resurrection of the dead.
Yeah.
And,
this is the Heath's thing about telling people what to think, right?
Yeah.
This is, it allows us to imagine what our actual task is.
Right. It's also, I think, another thing is that we sometimes, because we're weak or cowardly, we are afraid to tell people the truth. And so, I could even like for example, this is just a kind of dumb example, but it happens all the time. This is why, people will tell their children lies about what happens to their pets when they die. And it's like, this isn't actually, you should actually tell your children the truth.
Yes.
Don't make up fairy tales. And you should actually tell them the truth. Look, there will be, here's what we know. In the new creation is going to be restored, and it's going to be filled with life. And that's going to mean plants and animals in some way like unto the first creation before the fall.
Yeah.
And so we totally expect dogs and cats in some way in heaven. And we could say also, you will not be sad or missing anything in heaven. Do we know if Fido exactly in his exact personality is going to be there? No. Is there any reason to expect that? No, there isn't. Because dogs don't have souls. And now we don't have to be completely dogmatic about it, but I think we shouldn't fill their heads with lies, partially because when they find out we've been lying, they might think we're lying about other things.
Yeah.
But also because in reality, the truth is actually more comforting than nonsense. And children will actually be more comforted with a hard truth that is true than they will be with a fairy tale. And they can tell the difference. And I think this now that's just with children, but I can think of where you've got, people concerned about the fate of their, relatives who aren't believers. We should not make up stuff like, well, maybe Jesus will give him a chance after he dies. Just all the kinds of things that people have made up over the years to get out of the reality. What we say is all of the elect will be in heaven. Baptism's no joke. God takes it very seriously. Keep praying. He hears and answers the prayers of his people, and trust and believe that he works all things together for good, right? We got to tell people the truth. The truth actually, because the truth is real and it's solid. It's part of that orientation. And I think sometimes we don't believe that. We don't trust that. We think we can comfort people with lies, but really we're just trying to comfort ourselves to avoid the awkwardness or the confrontation. All right, you want to go back to Luther?
Yes, please. I think that was a great aside.
So he switches. It is a kind of law gospel sermon, this sermon. Not completely, but the first half he deals with this death stuff. He makes it interesting. I thought was at one point he says he's got a lot about original sin, a lot of kind of monergistic sola gratia stuff, which is all very good. He says at some point that people today don't recognize that we die because of original sin. They think we're just animals and we just die and it's just accidental. And I was sort of thinking about that. Now it seems to me as though people have more pagan ideas than that. And in fact, the immortality of the soul seems to be a given. It's just that they either think nobody goes to hell, everybody goes to a better place, all right? Or they think, somehow this circle of life thing. I don't know what to do about that. I'm just kind of mentioning it. I do think that we're living in a different world than Luther did in that regard. And then he gets into the second half of the sermon is really a marvelous explication of the gospel and of the resurrection. And then the last kind of half of the second half is just pure application. Luther returns to how we should be comforted by this, and we should see the compassion of Jesus Christ, who comes to defeat death, who will raise all of the dead on the last day and give life to all those who believe, we and all who believe in Christ. So it is kind of a nice example. There's doctrine in this sermon. There's correction in this sermon, but it does fall into the kind of law gospel pattern that we kind of overused and abused to some degree for a long time, but which is an absolute legit sermon outline and form, and more applicable to some texts and at some times than others. So it's a great example of, I would say, Luther preaching what would sort of be recognized, as a law gospel kind of thing. So I liked it for that.
It did seem like, too, he was, in this regard, the text lends itself to that.
Yeah.
Which that first part of the text is all the recognition of the law coming to pass, death. And then the second half is the resurrection.
Right. So. And so, when we get into all this, our kind of criticism of overusing or, of seeing Walther's Law and Gospel book as a homiletics textbook, it's not to say that it can't ever be done, but it ought to be driven by the text.
Yeah.
And Gerhardt and Pieper and Walther would agree with that. Walther never advocates the kind of law gospel outline as the only proper sermon form, or comes up with the idea that a sermon can't end with a law statement. That's not Walther. So.
How does Luther treat verses 16 and 17 with the fear and the glorifying God? Because I think I remember reading at some point where he says, they recognize that God has visited their people, but their fear is not yet faith. Was that in this one, or?
I don't remember it. I mean...
Like, as though Luther is saying, giving a warning against marveling without believing.
I don't think he did in the sermon I read.
Okay.
I don't remember him dealing with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a legit concern. Yeah, I mean, nobody seems to be, I mean, these don't seem to be, again, like they're not asking Jesus to do this, right? They didn't bring this boy to Jesus as they raised him.
Right.
This isn't Jairus,
Right.
And that's part of why Luther loves it so much. It is kind of so purely obviously monergistic. Always resurrections and coming to faith are monergistic. But, here it's kind of very plain that way. But I guess I never felt like I needed to doubt the sincerity of their fear and wonder at the end of this.
They do glorify God.
They do glorify God, and they haven't behaved wrongly. They're not doing anything. I mean, she's wailing. That's as close as you get to them doing something slightly wrong. And then maybe to the crowd that's following her, looking for maybe they're looking for a spectacle. Maybe they're paid wailers. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
But
is that a thing?
It's I don't know if it was a thing then, but my understanding is it has been a thing in Eastern cultures where if you were wealthy, you would hire people to wail at to the funeral of your loved ones to show how important they were.
Oh my, that's grotesque.
I know. Well, but sometimes then people would volunteer to do it too. If she was
paid,
she would do it. They would just do it kind of as a general, civic, kind of like, this poor woman's son died. We don't know him. We're not really that sad about it, but we want to give some honor and recognize a significant event has happened. So we're going to pretend like we are. It's still kind of weird. I'm not.
Have you ever used the crowd that gathers as an opportunity to say you should go to funerals?
Oh, no, but I like it. I think the problem is, we've talked about this before, I have a problem with the word crowd.
We've talked about this?
We have. So that word feels malicious to me in Greek. And I think maybe I'm unfairly reading it. You've told me I was before.
I did?
So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of on me, is that right? The crowd and maybe I'm just being too colored by. I should look into it again.
I think the crowd is the.
You think it's neutral?
People.
It's a neutral term.
Yeah, that's who Jesus is fighting over primarily, the crowd and the Pharisees.
I think it's a little more.
Are trying, and sometimes that crowd is won over by the doctrine and catechism of the Pharisees, the scribes, and the chief priests. And sometimes that crowd is won over by Jesus and his disciples. And I think that's the battleground of the crowd.
Okay, but I mean, you could say that of the Pharisees themselves.
Yeah, right? I know, but the way it plays out in some of these gospel narratives is kind of that way.
I think crowd is a negative. Well, I mean, compare the word crowd to the word ecclesia, right? To those who are gathered.
Sure.
I mean, there is, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's neutral. Maybe it's more neutral than
when I say neutral, I don't mean. They're not in anyone's camp yet.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I'm being too hard on them. I feel like it's a mob waiting to yell crucify.
Yeah. The crowd is sometimes that.
Sometimes, but maybe not always. So I'm kind of So that's probably why I haven't used this as an excuse to say go to funerals. But I like the idea of using this to say go to funerals.
Yeah.
It is it's like all this stuff in the church. It is a great support to our brothers and sisters. And just to recognize that even if you didn't know this person, I mean, it was a member of your congregation, right? It was a member of our community. And you have even if you didn't know them personally, you're connected. And
Jesus goes to him.
And Jesus goes to him. Well, it is funny how so I had a little surgery this summer. It was an outpatient thing. It wasn't too big a deal, but anyway, I wasn't actually able to preach the next Sunday. I was scheduled to, but the recovery was a little worse than I expected. And then I come to church, and then they include me in the prayers. And I was totally embarrassed and hated it, which is hilarious because I'm always telling people that they should let us include them in the prayers because, this is how we care for one another and blah, blah, which is all true. But it's funny how proud we are, right?
Yeah.
That we don't, I want that for everybody else, but then when it was me, personally, I feel I'm embarrassed, and what's wrong with me,
Yeah.
I'm a hypocrite. That's what's wrong with me. But anyway, it's the same.
This is the same feeling I had. Our last miscarriage was far enough along that we could have a funeral. And, we actually had one. And I was like, let's just have it really small. Let's not announce this. And I can't remember who I was talking to. And it was a member of the family. And they said, Jason, I would be mad at my pastor if they didn't let me know that there was this funeral.
That's right.
And I was like, okay, so I'll do it. And you're right. It feels like but I think you're meant to do that. Like you're meant to, and it's a very humbling experience to receive that kind of comfort that you're used to giving.
Yep.
And we need to learn how to receive it.
Absolutely. No, I mean, we need to get over ourselves.
Yes.
And no, totally. And I think there's a corresponding thing here with go to funerals, And why don't people go to funerals? Well, because they're embarrassed because they don't know the person as well as they think they should, or they feel like it makes them uncomfortable. Uh-huh. Well, don't go anywhere. You're not going there to be for your own comfort. You're going there. You might find comfort there, but you're going there primarily as a support and to show love and concern to the grieving, right? And to honor the confession that the deceased made, and that's a valid and good thing. So
yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts here?
No. My final thought is, I'm surprised we had so much to talk about.
I'm not ever surprised. But that's one of the great things about doing something like this is, we've discussed this before in terms of, all right, we got to do this, and sometimes maybe not looking forward to it, and how much do you actually get out of just a conversation with someone else on these sacred things? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's the iron sharpening iron, right? Yeah. It's when you say it out. Well, I just saw a quote. Where was it? Oh, what was it? Something was about, it's this old thing that you think you understand something until you try to explain it.
Yes.
And there's a Latin term for that. But, when you're forced to explain it, Socrates does this to people. And then it's like, I thought I had an idea here that made sense and was coherent. But now that I'm trying to explain it, so that's very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good. All right.
Well, we'll pick up next week.
Great. Looking forward to it.